In this part of the lesson, I want us to look at how to calculate square root. In some cases, you may be given a big square number, which you are not sure which number was multiplied to give the square number given. So, we look at some examples. In our first example, we are told to find the square root of 64. Now, you look at the solution. First, you need to write this down using the sign which we have learnt about. So, we write the sign first, and then we write 64 inside the sign. So this means we find the square root of 64. Now, in this case, we are going to use a method called a prime factor tree. So step number 1, we are going to use a prime factor tree. If you are not familiar with what a prime factor tree or what are prime factors, I want you to refer to the lesson on GCD. In that part of the lesson, I have looked at prime factors and the prime factor tree. So, if you are not familiar with this prime factor tree, refer to the GCD lesson. Now, let us find the prime factors of 64. You have 64. When you are finding the prime factors, you start with the lowest prime number, and the lowest prime number is 2. So 64 can be divided by 2. 64 divided by 2 will give you 32. Then 32 can still be divided by 2 again. 32 divided by 2 will give you 16. Then 16 can still be divided by 2, and we are left with 8. 8 can still be divided by 2 again. We are left with 4. And finally, 4 can still be divided by 2 again, and we are left with 2. Now, we cannot divide further. So, the prime factors of 64 are 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So, the prime factors of 64 will be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So these are the prime factors of 64. We got back to the first step, use the prime factors, and we have found the prime factors of 64. So we got to the second step. The second step is to pair the prime factors. What I mean is you group them into 2. So group into 2. Now, these are the prime factors. The second step, we are supposed to group them into 2. So we can form one pair of 2 times 2. We can form another pair of 2 times 2, and we can form the last pair of 2 times 2. We are done with the second step. The third and the final step. The third step is to pick one from each pair and multiply. This is the final step. You pick one from each pair and multiply. When you do that, that will give you the square root of the number. So the square root of 64 will be given by, out of this pair we pick 1, so it will be 2, we multiply it by, out of the second pair we pick 1, we multiply it by, out of the third pair we pick one number, like that. So we multiply this, we have 2 multiplied by 2 is 4, 4 multiplied by 2 is 8. So 8 is the square root of 64, and we know that 8 multiplied by itself will give you 64. So the answer is the square root of 64 is 8.